as we do those little things, we'll win. We'll be able to pull ourselves through the process. The process will be painful. It will be uncomfortable. It's going to be frustrating. All of those emotions are going to be in that process to your goal. Chad Peterman here, and you are listening to Can't Stop the Growth, a platform for leaders and teams to grow and thrive. We highlight the importance of personal development, pursuing greatness, and always chasing your potential. Let's get into it. I want to talk a little bit today about the process. So I've sent out a couple of emails, sent out one this Monday, sent out one last Monday. And the one last Monday probably got the most response that I've ever seen in anything that I've sent out. And, as I sent it out, I was glad that it made an impact. I'm glad that people could relate to it. But it really got me thinking, why did it have such a impact? Why were people texting me about it and, responding on social media and different stuff like that? And the main reason I asked why was because in the message that I sent out a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the struggle that I was having with that process. And I think there was a part of it where me sharing kind of my story and the struggle and everything was relatable. But there was also a part of it where after I did it and people were like, yeah, I need to remember that too. I need to, really understand that I need to enjoy the process and not focus so much on the result. And in the days after, I continued to be frustrated. Enjoying the process was very difficult. And I was like, well, I sent this out and I said these things, and yet I'm still struggling to wrap my mind around enjoying this so-called process. Like, I know I need to do it, but mentally, when I wake up each morning, I'm having a difficult damn time. I don't like this. This isn't fun. I thought we were supposed to enjoy this. I'm enjoying nothing about this so-called process that I talked about. And so what I started to look at was like, okay, how are we going to dive in, and when does enjoyment come in this process that we're all in as we all aim for goals and, try to do better in our lives and all of these things? When does this enjoyment kick in, and how do we activate that enjoyment? So let's dive into this topic, and let me start thinking. So I've been scouring, trying to figure out what are these things that we need to focus on in order to find that enjoyment in this process, especially in a climate, weather being one of them, but just in this world that we live in where there is so much negativity. Times are difficult right now. People are in a lot of ways struggling. It's an election year, which brings a lot of anxiety. There's just a lot of stuff that you read out there that says, hey, not everything's roses, right? And so how are we going to navigate that? Because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what is presented to us. It's really about our focus and determination as it relates to what it is that we want to achieve, whether that be in work, whether that be personally, professional, whatever it is. How do we focus on that? And so what I've got is 5 things that I've really been reminding myself about as I wake up each morning and kind of face the world and try to achieve our goals at the same time. And so the first one, and we've talked about this so many times, but I think it's one of those that at least I need a constant reminder of what we need, what is kind of our ace up our sleeve. And at the end of the day, that's our attitude, right? Attitude is everything. We've got to have a positive attitude. Very few people, I think, have ever achieved anything with a negative attitude. Everyone's met someone with a negative attitude. They are a pain in the ass, but they can have an effect on you. Negativity can have, while we may not think about it, it can have a huge impact on us. I mean, watch the news. But they know that's what grabs people's attention, right? And so they continue to push that out there. I'm a huge believer in whatever you think, you're right. So if you want to think negative about a situation, if you want to think that I get all the worst calls or someone's out to get me or whatever it may be, chances are you're right. You're right. The opposite of that would be every call's an opportunity. If we take that approach, my guess is we're going to get a hell of a lot better results. As you think about it, where or what things trigger your attitude to divert more negative? I said it in my message on Monday. One of the things that can drastically influence my attitude is getting my kids ready in the morning. It's chaos. It's not fun. No one listens to me ever. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And I know that if I don't approach waking them up and getting them ready with a positive attitude, if I don't approach that as I'm going to be the best dad possible for the next 30 minutes and I'm going to hold this thing together, that can get my day started off on the wrong foot. I mean, I love them to death, and they are 5 and 2, so, hey, we'll give them a little bit of slack. But put your shoes on. Come on. God bless. They're slip-ons. So, again, what are those instances that we can identify where we know that it puts us in a negative headspace? What does that look like? Because what I know, and you guys have probably seen this, if you're in a negative headspace, how many red lights do you get? How many people do you encounter on the roadway that are terrible drivers? How many times do you stub your toe, drop your drink, spill it on yourself, all of that? If you think back to when those things happen, more than likely, you're in a negative headspace. But then there's the times when you're in a positive headspace and you spill something on yourself, and what do? You laugh. And I test this with my kids. Literally, if I go into getting them ready in a positive headspace, they're more cooperative. They don't know what kind of headspace I'm in. They may be able to feel it a little bit, but then I get, I love you, Daddy. I'll walk to the car. Okay. Can we do this every day? But again, we, via our attitude, get to influence a lot of what happens. That's not to say that nothing bad is ever going to happen. But when those things do happen that could be viewed as bad, we learn from them. We take them in stride. We laugh. We continue forward. One of the things that we were actually talking about yesterday, we're doing the pilot right now of this new leadership class that we're rolling out. And so what we were talking about, and the reason I bring it up, is we did an exercise where we wrote on the back of a card, we wrote all the people that were influential in our lives. Everybody can think of, hey, these 5, 6 people that were hugely influential in our lives. And what we did as an exercise is we had to pick one person and then text them and tell them how grateful we were for them. Now, you want to talk about almost bringing you to tears in a training. But what we were talking about was the power that writing down something that you're grateful for or sending someone a text message and telling them how grateful you are for the impact that they've had in your life, how that can literally, it changes your physical makeup. If anybody's ever done this, I try to do this every morning. I write to the kids, and the first thing I start out with is 3 things I'm grateful for. My hope is that one day they'll read this and they'll be like, why does he keep writing all these grateful things down? Well, okay, there's a lesson in here. But when I do that, it puts me in the right headspace. And it's so weird, right? I write down 3 sentences and all of a sudden I go from one disposition to a completely different one. Like, how is that possible? Well, at the end of the day, it's affecting our attitude. It's affecting our outlook. How do we see things in life? We're all going to experience tough situations. I'm not here to tell you that you won't. And I'm not here to tell you that your attitude will safeguard you from anything bad ever happening. But what I am here to tell you is that your attitude will determine what you learn from those situations, how you navigate those situations, and ultimately how you come out on the other side. People who are unwilling to learn from bad things and just think that they are the victim of their own life, guess what? They will always be the victim of their own life. It's what happens. So how do we harness our attitude? How do we go into every day and understand that, this may be a rocky day, but God willing, I'm going to give it all I got. It's going to be a good day. I may get some bad news, but by golly, we're going to get better from it. And just think if you took that attitude, how contagious that would be. When we talk about leadership, you better have a positive attitude. So think about that. As you navigate the process, we know it's going to be hard. Anything worth shooting for is going to be hard. If it was easy, well, your goal probably isn't real great. We know it's going to be hard. How do we arm ourselves to go through the hard process? Attitude is the first step. The next one is being able to commit, right? I see so many people, when it comes down to goal setting, they're setting these goals, and that's great. And, we encourage you to set big goals and set your goal and then double it. The key piece to this is you have to be willing to commit. Now, what does commitment look like? I think the key piece to making sure that you have the commitment that you need is all of your commitments should be coupled with urgency. And I've talked about this before, but I learned this yesterday, actually, which was awesome. So, right now, it is 50 degrees out. It's not great weather for what we're trying to do. So, we could look at that, and we could sit back and just wait to see what happens. And regrettably, that's what I've been doing the last week or so, right? Sitting back, waiting for things to change. Maybe it'll get cold. Maybe we'll sell something. Maybe we won't. But I was just so frustrated. And I woke up and I was preparing for this talk and I came across this point. So I'd already written it down. And I'm like, this happens a lot. Oh, shoot, if I'm going to talk about this, I better be about this. And I said, okay, let's think about this. We are good at this. We're good at this thing. We are good at selling new systems. So what are we not doing? Or what do we need to focus on that we have lost or that something has just went awry? What do we need to do? And so I come in and Steve and I meet at 7:15. We're like, all right, let's write the process on the board. See, Steve's already writing the process out on the board. We're like, here it is. All right. We're like, okay, here's what we're doing. I said, what I know is that the first 6 months of last year, very similar weather. Everything was, variables were very similar. What are we doing today or what aren't we doing today that we were doing then? And we said, why don't we just fix that and see if it works? And we both looked at each other like, well, today would be a great day to start. Let's do it. All right, perfect. We send a message out to everybody and we got going, and you could feel the energy because of the urgency with which we were committed to making this thing work rather than just sitting back and waiting for something to happen. And you know what happened yesterday? Probably our best day of the year. Now, I'm not taking credit for that. I didn't do anything, right? We got real hyped up in a meeting room and we went to do it. The team did the work. But what I believe is that urgency trickled down through the whole team. And I didn't talk to a single one of them. Actually, I talked to one. But I didn't talk to a single one of them. But that urgency, that energy starts to permeate through the team. Starts to roll downhill. It's very similar to attitude, right? When you couple your attitude, a positive attitude, like we are going to figure this damn thing out, and you couple that with energy and urgency and a commitment to making something happen, there is no other choice but for something to happen. Now, it's hard, right? Because we've all gotten hyped up about something and ran headfirst into trying to do something different, and you hit a roadblock, right? Well, you got to bring that same energy the next day and the next day until you finally break through. And that, to me, is where you begin to amplify your leadership. If you want people to respond, if you want people to move mountains, they better feel your energy. No one ever motivated anybody by sitting at a desk moping or looking at a report. At least not me. And I'm not like the most, oh, go get them. Like, I'm fairly quiet and reserved. But there again, that ain't going to get things done. So I got to be someone different if we're going to make things happen. And we all have to be someone maybe a little bit different than we maybe naturally are. Some people are naturally like super excitable and fun-loving and just ready to roll. Great. They have that natural ability, and that's awesome. Well, if you don't, like me, then you got to lean into it. If you want to truly lead people, in fact, if you want to accomplish your goals, my guess is you're going to be hard-pressed to achieve them without some urgency. You know, when we talk about the process, what can be frustrating is when you do hit that wall, when you don't see the result. Because for a big goal, you're going to spend the vast majority of your time in the process. Reaching the goal doesn't happen until the end. And I think that's where that commitment piece comes in. Are you committed to bringing that urgency and energy for however many days you think it's going to take to hit that goal? Because if you're not, more than likely, you're not going to hit that goal. That's not to say, just like I admitted, I didn't bring the urgency and the energy over like the last week. So what do I know? I know that I got to double down. We got to go. Because I missed on the commitment and urgency over the last week. And that's okay. Because we're going to stumble along the way, right? We're going to look back and say, crap, I did not have a good week. And guess what? That's okay. That's okay. You can get back on the horse and you can get after it. And you can bring that urgency and that energy to achieving your goals. The next one is focused action. This is something that we are always, and I think everybody is. You know, we live in a world today where everybody's busy, right? Busy, always doing something. These things are a big piece of that. You're always busy because you're always connected, right? Well, if we understand that we're always busy, always got stuff going on, what are we going to focus on? Are we just busy being busy? We talk about this a lot with leaders. Where is your time focused? If your job is to lead the performance of a team, where do you think your time should be spent? Probably with said team. It will be very difficult to lead them, to help them, to remove roadblocks for them if you are not with them. Kind of counterintuitive, right? If I am the leader of a group and I do not see them ever, if I'm not with them, if I'm not talking to them, if I'm not asking questions, trying to figure out what they're struggling with, how I can help them, you're not doing much leading. You're doing some supervising, I guess, to a certain degree. But the goal of a leader is to remove roadblocks for the people that you lead. How do they reach their potential? You are in a position to remove those things for them. That is your sole job. Do you want to do a good job of leadership? Walk around today to everybody that you lead and just ask them, what are you struggling with? How can I help? What are you struggling with? How can I help? That will focus your action. Where are you spending the majority of your time? When it comes to your individual goals, as I always say, most times when you set a goal, you know what you need to do to get there. Very few times have I seen people set goals and they set a goal with no idea how to get there. Because you wouldn't set that goal. Your goal would be to understand how I potentially do something in the future. So if you know what to do, the hard part, the process, the grind, all of that is all of the things that you really don't want to do. Because if you set the goal in the first place, more than likely you set it because you want to be a different version of yourself. You're not going to be a different version of yourself if you continue to do and focus on the same exact things that you're focused on today. You don't work like that. So where are you spending your time? One of the elements in this leadership class that we're teaching that sounds crazy, but I think it will be one of the most impactful lessons of the entire thing, is how to block things on your calendar. Now think about that. That is going to be a lesson in a leadership class. Why would that be a lesson? And why do I think that would be so impactful? Because in order to be a good leader, in order to achieve our goals, we have to focus our time. We all get the same amount of time. 24 hours. Everybody gets it. Now, how you spend your 24 hours can vary widely, right? So if your set of goals is here, what does your 24 hours today need to look like? You just need to take your time and focus on the things that more than likely you already know that you need to focus on. And that's hard. It's not going to be easy. So you have to find these little hacks like blocking time on your calendar. You know what I know? And I've been blocking time on my calendar for years. If it ain't on there, probably ain't going to get done. Along with blocking out your time, one of the things I do every week, usually on Thursday or Friday, is I go through my next week and I try to remove like 3 hours of either meetings or things that are on there. I try to move them. Because I know that if I move them, if I'm able to say, I don't need that, that is not going to bring me closer to what we're trying to do. If I move it or just don't do that, guess what? That frees me up. I can go find time in the still the same amount of time that I was allotting to work. And it's just small little changes. List out the most important things that you need to do over the course of a week, the most important things you need to focus on to achieve your goals, and I guarantee you, you're going to have a hell of a shot at hitting those. The next one is never stop learning. So we talked a little bit about this as it relates to failure and with our attitude. How do we view that? Do we come up short? Do we have a bad day? Whatever it may be. One of the most empowering things you can do for yourself is to force yourself to learn from every situation, and most importantly, the ones that didn't go right. The reason I say that is it's a hell of a lot easier to learn when something doesn't go right, because oftentimes when things go right, we don't ever stop to learn from it, right? We just continue on until we hit something that goes wrong, and then we can either take a step back with something that went wrong, or we can learn from it and we can continue to move forward. The other thing that being willing to learn from everything that you do, everything that happens to you, being willing to learn from it also affects your attitude. Think about it. Think about something that went wrong over the last couple of weeks, something that didn't go great, a result that you didn't like. Now take a minute and think about, what was my reaction in the moment? Was it good, bad? What was it? And now, what could I have learned from that situation? What did I learn? Often people that aren't willing to learn are those negative people in your life. Because anything bad that happens is not their fault, right? And where that learning comes in is when you take ownership of your results, of what's happening. And a lot of the times, the toughest thing that I see leaders struggle with is a willingness to take ownership for what happens. And the reason that's hard is because as a leader, you don't get to do it. Oftentimes, you know how to do it exactly. A lot of times, you were put in a position because you did whatever you're leading the people to do, you did it really well. And what we are working on is how do we train those people that do a particular job really, really well? How do we arm them to be really, really good at being a leader? Because it's a whole different set of skills. Whatever you were good at, that's great. But in order to be a good leader, you got to do a totally different thing. Your job is to remove obstacles from your team. But the key piece to that, the key piece to being able to remove a hurdle for someone else, to be willing to remove a roadblock so that they can be successful. Because it's not about you anymore. Not about you at all. Probably not going to get a whole lot of compliments. Probably not going to get a whole lot of pats on the back. Your job, your joy must come from seeing someone that you're leading succeed. Someone that you're leading moving forward, achieving their potential, getting better than they were yesterday. That is where your pat on the back comes from. But it comes as a result of taking ownership of their result, of what is happening. If they're struggling, it's because of you. Now that seems very, very backward, right? Like, hold on. So if they're struggling, it's on me. Yes, that is correct. You heard me right. That is on you. And that's not a negative. But again, it goes back to you always have to be learning. What did you learn from someone who went out and had a bad day yesterday? I learned that I probably need to have them in this morning. Probably need to sit down with them, make sure everything's good in their life, make sure they're not going through a tough time at home or something's wrong or whatever it is. Make sure they understand what it is that they are trying to do. A lot of the times it's just miscommunication, or they were unaware, or they just forgot, or they don't understand why, or whatever it is. Okay, cool. Well, that's on you. You got to keep working through that. When you take ownership, you're not getting in trouble. No one's going to get mad at you. In fact, people are going to celebrate you. People are going to praise you. Your people are going to love you. They're going to want to run through that wall for you. Lean in. Help somebody. Hey, I know you're really struggling, and that's probably on me. What can I do to help? What can I help explain? What do I need to do? I want to make you better. What kind of response do you think that you would get from that? I think it'd be pretty positive. You ought to try it. The last one goes along with never stop learning, but it's analyze the details. Now, how many times, especially as we grow, do we run into situations where we change something and unknowingly that changes something else that we had no intention of changing way down the road, or like 3 steps before that, or a step after that, or whatever it is? Like, the reason we had to make this slight modification to the process was because we changed something in the front end of the process that made this piece different, and we just had to put it back in and, okay, yeah, this still works. Like, why did we do that? Well, we did it because we thought that changing this piece up at the front end was going to produce some positive results, which it is. That's fantastic. But it's always imperative to, as you make changes, as you make modifications, to then sit back and analyze and figure out, is it going right? Are we moving in the right direction? And if we are, great, but continue to analyze. And we're going to do that because we're going to pay attention to the details. We're going to do the little things right. Everyone's heard it, right? The little things matter, right? Little things. That's what it's about. Not going to see the result right now, but over time, as we do those little things, we'll win. We'll be able to pull ourselves through the process. The process will be painful. It will be uncomfortable. It's going to be frustrating. You're going to feel embarrassed. All of those emotions are going to be in that process to your goal. That's the hard truth about trying to achieve something, about trying to get to a place that you've never been before, is it will not be easy. But we have tools. We have things that can help us through those tough times. We've got our attitude. We've got a commitment with urgency. We've got our energy, our focused action, our willingness to learn from everything, and we've got the power of the details. All of those things are going to help us through the process. If you're not enjoying the process, you're probably missing one of these things, because that's when the process gets fun. Yeah, it's hard. Today's just going to be as hard, if not harder, than yesterday, because we got to match that energy and commitment, and then we got to raise the bar. We got to go even higher, and we're going to do it because we got the commitment to do it. That's where we enjoy the process. That's where the fun comes in. If you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, why are you doing it? Bring some energy. Bring some urgency. So bring that to whatever it is that you do. And you will begin to enjoy that process. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to get connected, you can find me at chadmpeterman.com. To see what our team's up to, you can visit petermanbros.com. As always, keep growing out there.